Well, good evening, everybody. How are you? Let me get rid of my banner here. How are you all? Are you well?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That was a pretty good intro, Mike. I like that.
It wasn't quite as simple as it was meant to be. I left the whiskey night thing on there at the start, so I failed.
No, that was really, really impressive. Really like that. Fantastic. Thanks for having us, Mike. That's really, really kind of you. And looking forward to this.
It's great to have you on, Shameek. Jeremey and I have obviously done a number of these, and it's great to finally have you on one of the shows. So it's fantastic.
No, absolutely. I am desperate for a whiskey because I need to drown my sorrows now. Because I don't know if you just saw the scoreline, the Liverpool-Everton game, 2-0 to Everton, with a penalty that was not a penalty. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
Oh, I am so happy.
Well,
I'm a United.
Get boring then.
No, I will actually. Yeah, I'll have to.
So this evening we've got a few things to chat about, but we made the decision we would have a pour of some Glenfiddich. So Sham, have you got the 12-year-old there? Yeah.
It was really funny because I had to really look around because it's not one that I've got for a long, long time. But luckily one of my patients had got it for me. So I haven't had one of these for a long, long time. So I'm actually looking forward to it.
And Jeremey, you've brought something a little different because you couldn't find it well.
Yeah, and I will talk about that when the time comes. But I actually thought I had a 12-year-old. I must have drunk it.
One of the reasons I was quite excited and pleased to be doing the Glenfiddich 12 is it's kind of a ubiquitous dram. You know, if you go into any pub across any land, you will find a Glenfiddich 12. If you're in America, they might call it a Glenfiddich 12, but you'll still get it. It'll still be there. Now, the Glenfiddich means the Valley of the Deer, so that's why there's a stag on the bottle. So it's not a Patronus for Harry Potter; it's the Valley of the Deer. So Slange, I shall have a wee toast and a wee drink here. So.
No, for sure. Glenfiddich, it always reminds me. I used to actually drink quite a bit of it when I was younger, because it's such a nice, easy, smooth dram to drink. And it was just obviously the PR for it was so good at that time, and it was one of the most well-recognized brands around in the world. I think till about recently, till about 2014 or something, it was the best-selling whiskey in the world. Till I think Glenlivet, which I also love. I love the Glenlivet 18. Actually, it's one of my favorites. Took over. So then, I haven't drunk it for quite a while. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's the highest award-winning whiskey, I believe. It's won the most awards. And I do seem to remember, I don't know if Vic Cameron will come on at any point and leave any comments, but I remember when we were doing the whiskey diploma, I'm sure Vic said Glenfiddich were one of the first distilleries to export an aged statement whiskey. And because they were one of the first, it took a lot of the other distilleries a long time to catch up to release a 10 or a 12-year-old. So they were kind of ahead of the game, and everybody had Glenfiddich.
Yeah, I mean, Glenfiddich goes back to the 1880s. I think it was something around 1868. I can't remember the exact year. But one thing about Glenfiddich is it really was the first age statement. And if you think back to that time, there was very few whiskies that actually sold age statements. Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, I think Lafroig's done and a few others, but incredibly few, because it was all sold for blending, and that's been a problem. Now blending, everyone, you can't blame the distilleries that they think, well, we can make more money by selling it as malt as opposed to selling it off to blenders. So it is interesting. I mean, and you're right about it was the biggest selling whiskey, and now they've gone head to toe. And it's only in the last few years that Glenlivet said we've actually sell more than Glenfiddich. And it was, they're not that far away. And I've been to visit these distilleries, I don't know, 20, 30 times. And
have you been to the Glenfiddich distillery?
Every year. I go
Oh,
every.
really? Yeah, because apparently it was the first one open. They're the first ones who opened one.
They
Actually.
were
The year I was born.
Yeah, they've been going for years. I mean, I must say the reason to go to Glenfiddich, forget the whiskey, is actually the restaurant. It's a fabulous restaurant. In fact, this year they changed it because of COVID. We had to move to a different venue, but we always go there for a meal. And they also have, it costs you a pretty penny, but you can have some quite rare drams. You know, they will sell you a little bit, you know, so you can get to taste a lot of drams that you may not have a bottle or the money to buy a bottle if you so desire, provided you're not driving.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's great as well if you look at a map of you know, do a Google search of Glenfiddich and you'll find it in Speyside. And for me, it always makes me reminiscent of when you look at a map of Disneyland and see all the familiar areas, or Universal Studios, and you see all the films that you're getting excited about. You look at a map of Speyside, and I get that kind of tingle where it's, oh, Balvenie and Macallan's just there, and you know, Craig Lackey's just down the road, and that's what it looks like when you look at the map.
It is. It's amazing, and you know, I've been very fortunate. I've been going there for the last. Well, I actually proposed to my wife about literally a few hundred yards from Balmoral.
I thought you said a few hundred years ago.
It feels like that. Very close to Royal Loch Nagar and to Balmoral Estate on the banks of the River Dee. And I've been going, I've got a timeshare, and I go every single year. And that's why I know all the distilleries. And I've got to admit, from 1989 till about 2003 it was, I knew everything about whiskey. I've been to the distilleries numerous times. Hated whiskey. That may surprise people. I couldn't stand the stuff. I was more into vodka and cocktails, and whiskey didn't do it to me. My father was not a whiskey connoisseur. He liked a dram. And one of my memories, without getting a bit too morbid, was when he really was close to the end of his days and he was bedridden, asking for a dram of Bell's or whatever. And my brother and I just didn't like whiskey. And shortly after he passed away, it came that I just got this taste for whiskey. And, you know, it was the kind of thing I would have spit out. I just didn't like it. And I don't know, you know, we joke that it came from beyond the grave. But that was when my obsession, and obviously going up year after year, you know, my passion is massive, and that's how it's grown. But my kids are all versed in it from a young age about whiskey. Yeah. You know, they grew up going to the distilleries, you know, and we have my favourites.
I was going to say, let's get some tasting notes here as well then. So, Sham, you have a wee sample of your 12, and Jeremy,
I was going to say, I don't know if you ever do this and stuff, but I think you should try this. I don't know if you like it. So, pop your hands on top, just shake it around a little bit, so make sure it doesn't spill.
Of course.
The bubbles. You can see the bubbles going. If the bubbles go really quickly, it means it's low ABV, basically. So it's low alcohol. The longer the bubbles stay, it's more alcohol. Now, what I want you to do is get your hand, which is a bit wet, rub it.
Yeah. And then smell. Yeah.
And then smell.
Yeah.
And now that is a Scottish barley field.
Yeah.
You smell the barley, and it just gets you into the mood.
It is. When I've actually been to many of the distilleries, it's very interesting the way that they do it, and the legs and everything else. And you go through that, and I've been through that process many times, having done them. I mean, my whiskey tonight is Glenfiddich, and for years now, almost every single year, I bought a bottle at the distillery that you fill yourself, and it's usually a 15-year-old. And like anything, they actually, I have to say this, they do you a bit, because I remember literally half a dozen years or so, it was perhaps 80, 90 pounds. It's just gone up and up and up. And they give it you in a beautiful wooden box and the whole business. And it's always a 15-year-old. And it's always around the 55 to 57. This is 57.9. And it is distinctly different. It's much more sherried and everything. And as you know, Shameek, they mix. You know, they really do mix. You know, it's, you know, you can obviously have your apples and pears and your lightness of the whiskey. It is a light whiskey.
Yeah, it's definitely a light floral, grassy whiskey. It's the whiskey that I would, you know, it's not what I would choose for my normal drinking, but if I had to have an evening with friends and we wanted to finish 1 or 2 bottles off, this would be a good bottle to choose because it's a nice, easy drinking. It's not going to, you know, it's not going to assault your senses too much. It's going to flow so nicely, and everyone's going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So no, lovely. A little bit of honey, a little bit of pear, very smooth. A little boring for me. Yeah. I do love my Speyside. I'm a big Speyside fan, actually, but I do like them a bit rich and spicy. But I would never say no to this.
Yeah, I mean, they shuffle it around actually in bourbon and obviously Oloroso casks and things. And, you know, with the Slayer range, they put some and then they take some out and they carry it on, keeping it full, and they take only half out, put more in, and they mix a bit of bourbon and a bit of virgin oak and a bit of American oak and in their unique formers for the Solera. And you do get a bit of everything. And I think that's, as you said, is a very well-rounded light whiskey. And it's incredible that they've got like 20, I think it's about 28 stills going. And they're all quite small, which surprises you because, you know, and they take it off at quite a high alcohol. And that, you know, because it's small stills, if they left it, they would find it would be more sulfurous and it would, which they don't want. And I believe that they actually bought the first stills going back to when they first opened from Cardew. So something, but it's, you know, they take it at high alcohol and they, you know, so they're only taking so much when they actually the distiller turns the tap. So that's why they've got 28 stills, and obviously the demand. It's a cracking whiskey, but as you said, the pears, the grass, the apples, and everything else. But then once you start bunging it around in sherry casks and things, and they mature, and let's face it, I know they're using bourbon now, but you go back, and it was very hit and miss with Glenfiddich because it goes back such a long time. So they won't have been using bourbon casks, I'm quite sure. I don't know this for a fact, but you know, bourbons only came around because they couldn't get enough sherry casks, and so I'm sure
bourbon casks either in America, so they had no other use for them.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, I think they're only allowed to use it as a first fill. They're not allowed to reuse the casks for bourbon. So correct. Yeah, there's a lot of access of bourbon.
Yeah, they are. I know now, isn't it amazing? You have virgin oak, you have American oak, you have European oak, and you know, the shoveling it around, and then you've got the sherries and all the different types of sherry and Pedro Jimenez and this and that, and you know, everybody seems to be an expert on these things. And Glenfiddich were #1 for marketing because they were the first kind of thing. So they've marketed incredibly.
But, you know, the shape of the bottle, the color of the bottle, it just evokes so many memories and emotions. You know, suddenly I'm back in my 20s and my 30s. Because this would be at the end of the night drink that we would have to just show, yes, this is a proper single malt that we're having, the best of the best.
Yeah, I mean, this particular one, because it's a cask, and they've danced it around, and I think it's spent quite a lot in it's quite light, but it's a bit deeper than. Because of the bottle, you can very rarely tell what you're getting, but it's quite a deep color, and it's spent some time, I can tell, in the sherry. And I can't remember because it doesn't even say on the bottle except it's 57.9. But you've still got that grass, you know. In fact, even more so than a regular 12-year-old. It's like you're in a field.
But I think I don't know if you guys know. I think, are they chill filtered? I think they do chill filter the Glenfiddich, don't they?
I think so.
You know, I have no idea for that one, Mike.
I would probably say on it if it didn't. I can do an experiment. I can add some water and have a look.
You know, we're even talking about that.
Or ice.
I will take your knowledge of that because most obviously are non-chill filtered, but
there's a big American market though for Glenfiddich, so and it is believed that a lot of Americans don't like to see their whiskey going cloudy. So that's.
I think there's a whole new snobby American market coming out that actually don't. That even the bourbons and everything, they like it non-chilled filtered.
Non-chilled now. Well, I mean, it looked a little oily when it went in. I couldn't see any clouding, so I don't know. However, I think what I quite like with Glenfiddich as well. They've obviously got. I've got 3 different bottles. I've got a nice 15-year-old which you can buy in the co-op as well for, you know, it's almost the same price as the 12-year-old actually, and I love a sherry cask, so this was a really great buy for you know, under 40 quid. Yeah, because your 12-year-old you can pick up for about 30. You know, it's not expensive. But I do quite like that, you know, this concept, and people obviously are not pleased with the non-age stuff, but I think they're quite clever by adding that word there. When you know, when you understand the language, calling it the experimental range is a stroke of genius, because if it doesn't work or people don't like it, hey, we were experimenting, you know, have given it a try. But I quite like the IPA, I have to say. I think it's nice.
I had a bottle of that and it's quite good. In fact, this cask is filled by my son James, who's lives in London, and it was the year of his wedding actually, so we bottled it. And it's quite interesting because I think this is spent a lot of time in a refill cask because of the colour of this.
Yeah. Have you tried the Fire and Cane?
Yes, I've sat. I would say about Glenfiddich, you said it like, have you seen the 19-year-old, for example? It's like marketing, because who does a 19-year-old? Okay. It was always 10, 12, this. They did the 19. And everybody's followed suit now. And I mean, I was just speaking to Mike before and saying that at some stage, love to do one on the different, some of them are older than some of the old distilleries, about some of the from the houses, because I buy from people who take their own cask. I know Mike's taken one of his own, got a cask in a few group. Well, there are many companies, obviously Gordon MacPhail, there's lots, Signatory, Rattray, and I love experimenting. I like the idea. This is why I go every year to all these different distilleries, and my wife's gone literally hundreds of miles just so I can buy a distillery-owned bottle of a particular malt. The farthest north we got, I think, was the Kleinlich, right near Brora. And let's face it, it is a bit of snob value. It's nice to have something. I particularly like cask strength. That's my thing. And obviously, when you buy these from the whiskey houses, I would say almost a lot of them are high cask strength. You can get some. It's a good question for you guys. What do you think the optimal strength they say is?
Depends. Everything is all on depends. Who you having it with, where you having it, what time you're having it, all of that makes a big factor into it. But if I'm just enjoying a normal whiskey and stuff, you know, I really like it around the 46-50 mark. It's really nice. It doesn't burn. You don't need to add water to it. And you can drink it nicely, enjoy the flavors, the strength, feel that little burn, feel that spiciness. So I just love all of that.
Yeah, I think you're right. 48 is, you know, they and often like you go to the distilleries and like Blair Athol or Royal Nagar, and they sell their 40-odd%, but they sell their distillery own at 48, and you get more out of it from the point of view of the experience of the whiskey. I mean, having said that, I prefer up. And I've got to admit, I don't know if it's the alcoholic kick or the job, but we'll talk. I mean, I drink things neat, but I do like things cold, and I've talked about ice and everything, and there's a lot of baloney talked about it, except now, as you know, so many of the distilleries, and I know you brought one about the Winter's Gold and Dalwhinnie, but so much, others are encouraging. Even one of the best whiskies, and I know we're talking about Glenfiddich, is a Highland Park, and they recently produced this cask strength malt, which I think is one of the finest whiskies you can buy per penny. Is magnificent, and there to even talk about, never mind having it neat, adding water, but also adding ice. The Americans love ice, and people say, oh well, it decreased the evaporation. You can't do a double blind trial because you can feel the cold, but it warms up in your mouth, you get the experience. And if you're like me, I do like things cold, but here I am drinking it neat, so I'll drink whiskey as you like it. But I think a bit like dentists, whiskey drinkers sometimes are like sheep. Oh, well, you're not meant to, therefore you don't. But you go to the distilleries, almost universally, they'll say whiskey is how you enjoy it. You know.
So, Jeremy, yeah, totally agree with that. The last point, whiskey is exactly how you enjoy it. If you bought the whiskey, you drink it the way you like it. Absolutely. However, personally, I'm not, depending on when I'm having it and whether it's a summer's evening and what whiskey and stuff, I don't like to drink it with ice, but that's a total personal thing.
Yeah,
you know?
most people do. Most people do. Well, I'm the exception, but
yeah,
the dentistry.
Ice just inhibits the flavor a little bit. It makes it just a little bit more dull and flat because you're bringing the temperature down, and it brings it down rapidly. So it is refreshing. It is nice to drink because obviously it's calming the burn of the alcohol. So which is why I think with your high strength whiskeys, the ice is calming that burn. So you're enjoying it that much more, which I agree with.
You've got to be careful as well. This Glenfiddich here is sitting at 40%. Now, obviously, legally, whiskey has to be 40% or higher to be called whiskey. So my only argument with that would be if you add a drop of water or add a block of ice to this particular whiskey, you're no longer drinking whiskey, you're drinking a spirit, whiskey flavored spirit.
You're drinking a cocktail.
You're right, Mike, but you weren't. That's only a recent phenomenon. Whiskey often 37.5.
I'm just trying to wind up.
But it is. Well, no, with the cask strength, I drink most of mine. As I say, cask strength. There's hardly a bottle I've got that is at 40 or 43.
But no, Jeremy, if it's a summer's evening and it's an aperitif and stuff, I will definitely put an ice cube in it.
It also changes. I've got water in here at the moment. If I put it in, you get the strength, and then as it slightly dilutes, then the water brings it out, and as you bring it into your mouth, so you may lose a tiny bit on the evaporation, but I don't think many people could actually tell that. And when it's in your mouth, it warms up, so all the flavors burst through. I mean, I've got one up here, which I bought recently from a Glenroth, 12-year-old. And it's quite phenomenal because it's been bottled at 67.5. And I call it rocket fuel. But what's interesting is a 12-year-old. So you think I've wrapped my head over this because I'm thinking, at what strength was it put in the barrel? And then you count the Angel's share and the decrease in alcohol, and you think to yourself, how's it got to 12 years and still be at 67.5? And I have no answer. Now, they could have put it in dunnage warehouses, low things, but that's, I don't know. And I might even speak to Rattray, I think it is, about how they've got it at 67.5 if it is a 12-year-old Glenroth. I have no idea, but I can tell you it's a very interesting whiskey. But I think for a lot of people, it's far too strong. And
have a quick go of this 15-year-old. It's a nice red color, that one as well. You can see that.
Mate, you're drinking it.
So that's been a long time in the sherry cots.
It's been in a sherry Solera, yeah.
Is that just sherry, or is it bourbon cost as well? That one.
It's been in sherry, bourbon, and also New York.
Yeah.
They
use that. They use these.
So we don't run on too late tonight because this was called a quick dram. This particular broadcast. We're going to try and avoid we're going to try and avoid the 2.5 hour saga. I want to get on to chatting about the whiskey tasting event, Shameek. Can you tell us a little bit about what's actually happening with this?
Yeah, so we're really excited about it. So we've done it through BACD. BACD is all about education and networking. And Paul Abrahams, who's the president of the BACD at the moment, his chosen charity is Confidental, which I believe Jeremey is the president of. Is that correct, Jeremey?
Yeah, I'm the chair, and I suppose I have to say the founder of Confidental.
What a fantastic charity, Jeremey. Really well done.
Well, it's something that's very close to my heart, and I don't want to really go on about it because, first of all, I'm going to say without the team that came together, Confidental would never have got off the ground. So it was something that I might have initiated, but I want to pay incredible, I suppose, praise to my fellow trustees. And at first there was 4 of us, and now we've got 7 trustees, and they've taken it onto, between us, they've taken it onto a different level. And when people talk about it, about mental health, thank God, after coming up to 40 years next year, I've been qualified. I've never, my wife would say I am mental, and I think many people who know me, but I've never actually, in all seriousness, had any mental health issues. But I have seen around me people, on a personal level, but also colleagues who have really suffered with their mental health. And I go back, and as a fellow contributor of GDP UK, and one post above all else sticks in my head, and it was an anonymous post about a dentist who said that he went to work, was doing an RCT, put in some Corsadil into the root canal. Not that I think that's a great idea, but he did. And the patient had anaphylaxis and died in his chair. And at the time, it really hit home. And I said, I think it was about 2008. And I said, we need to do something about this. I said, we need a helpline, we need this, we need that. And everyone says, yeah, I'll help, but nothing happened. And a few times during that time on GDP UK, we had these anonymous posts, and I said, we need to do something, nothing happened. And then there was a dentist by the surname, good Scottish surname of Ferguson, who died and committed suicide in the Manchester area. And there were some problems, I believe, with the GDC and some health issues. And I met a colleague and a friend of his in my local gym. And he said to me, one day when he came in, I saw him looking glum. I said, what's the matter? What's the matter? He says, he explained what had happened about this colleague. And I felt immediate sympathy for him, his suffering and empathy. And his words stuck with me. I wish I'd done more. And I thought, wow. And a few weeks later, in my naivety, I picked up the phone to GSK. And I said, could I have some funding? I want to do something for mental health. And I was very naive. And they said, a very nice email also sent to me. Thanks very much, but no thanks. We've got our chosen charities, and you have to have been in operation for so long as a charity. And if you are, then come back to us. And I thank you. And then I don't know what possessed me. Shortly after that, I just picked up the phone to everybody in the profession, from the heads of the indemnity organizations. I picked up the phone to the GDC, the BDA, the Benevolent, and said, we need to get together. MDDUS gave me their headquarters in London. And what amazed me more, they all came. And I was told to invite a few people, and dentist came, Tony Jacobs from GDP UK, and he came along, and I was Vicky Holden, she came, and as well as that, I was told to invite this guy Keith Hayes, who I'd often chatted with, type of thing, on posting and knew his name from GDP UK, and we all came around a table, which I chaired, and we invited, for example, there's a, goodness me, the name is, it must be the whiskey. There's a similar organization for the law profession, and they came along to the meeting as well. And it was quite amazing that all these organisations, the faculty came, the FGDP, and it really went round the room, and everyone put their Henry Schein, they were there, the CEO came, and I said, it wasn't they just sent people, a lot of the people were the CEOs, and I just thought, wow, why they come? I'm just an individual, not an organisation. And they actually came, and I thought, wow. They sat, and they all kind of were very defensive. We've got it covered. And I said, you think you've got it covered? I said, I remember in my first year, and I'm very open about this, I got a letter just after a year, being a year qualified. I got a letter from a patient, a fractured reamer, if either of you guys know what those are. I had a fractured reamer and an upper lateral incisor, and it went to what we call service committees in those days. And these 3 dentists were almost barbaric with me. Why didn't you try and get it out? And I just looked at them and went, how? Could you help me? And it was barbaric. There was no empathy or sympathy from anyone. Even the indemnity just turned up on the day in those days. But I walked the plank for weeks and months before it actually went there. And nothing really happened afterwards. They just didn't pay me. They said, well, you signed up, or I worked in a big multiple practice. They put on a cross on the FP17 in those days, and they said, well, that means the patient would have been dentally fit. She wasn't, was she? And so they didn't pay me. That was all. But the scar to my mental health during that time was palpable. And after that, it affected the way I practiced. I wouldn't say I was guarded, but I was on my guard, okay? And therefore, I could empathize all through my career with people who had problems with litigation or with any of these societies. So around this time, this guy unfortunately committed suicide. There was another guy who had real problems with alcohol. Okay. And so what did I do? I basically, after this meeting, I went away because they all said, is there a need for it? And I asked on a Facebook page, and somebody told me about this Facebook, and I don't know if you guys know about it, called Mental Dental. And they've got thousands and thousands of people on board with it. I put my life story and also what I'd done and said, do you think we need anyone? And I thought, if I get 30, 40 likes, I could go back and say, yeah, we need an organization. What I wasn't ready for was, never mind the dozens of messages, the hundreds and hundreds of, like, around 1,000, I think it was, of likes, and yes, we need it. So then I called another meeting, and people, the movers and shakers of the profession came to this. People like the head of my dentist, clinical lead for that, and other organisations. John Milne from the came along as well, from the CQC, and Jenny Pinder, head of women in dentistry, who's been involved in women in dentistry, well known, and Lauren Harhey started the Facebook group Mental Dental, and it almost fell into place. There was no elections, there was no meeting. It was basically Lauren Harhey, Jenny Pinder, Keith Hayes, and myself who basically took the reins, and from that point formed initially what was not a charity, because you don't suddenly become a charity, a non-profit organisation. And Keith Hayes was so incredible and instrumental in getting all the phones organised and a lot of the things you have to do with setting up such an organisation. And we, when various companies came on board and sponsored us, Practice Plan were incredible. The Wesleyan Group, they, Practice Plan are part of them. They come on board. My dentist gave us a donation as well. And we started training volunteers, and we had meetings we invited all different types of people to come.
I know for anyone that isn't aware, it is a helpline. So it's a case of phoning the telephone number if you're needing support. It can be anonymous. You're going to.
I'll come on to, yeah. And so these people came on board, and they organise this helpline. And you're right, it's anonymous. That was one of the things I insisted on straight from. One, anonymity. Two, that the people you're speaking are non-judgmental, and they're all been dentists or recently retired. And we've had training with people from the Samaritans, from Relate, from Mind, and different organisations. People who, Janine Brooks, who's very well known to do in dentistry with mental health and everything. And Sue Boynton, who's worked for the DDS, Dental Protection Society, and other people have given us presentations as well. So Brown Westbury, and so our volunteers, and it's available 24/7, 365 days a year. The number is always on Mental Dental, and it's 0333 987 5158. You can call anytime, and you'll speak to somebody who will listen to you. I want to say that we're not
again there, Jeremy. 0333
0333 987 5158, and we'll give that out at the end as well if anybody wants to grab a paper. We're non-judgmental. We're not going to tell you do this, do that, do the other. We'll, if necessary, 0333, yeah, that's it. We won't tell you what to do, and I think that that's important. We'll help you come to your own conclusions of what a pathway forward. We'll signpost you to other organisations, some like the Dentist Health Support Trust, if you've got issues with drugs and alcohol or medical conditions, eating disorders, or whatever, or we'll send you to other specific organisations, some are household names, like Mind, like the Samaritans, and then there's lots of other organisations on our resource list. And we have resources such as dental solicitors who will speak to you anonymously. They've agreed to. So that's also a resource that we can get into. And, on our website, we actually have some information and some resources that you can access there. But my personal goal and mission was that if I, when I first mooted to the idea, if it could help one person and stop them doing something irreversible, then it was all well worth it. And I know that I've had a couple of calls myself where that has been an issue. They weren't presently going to do it, but they had thought about it. And suicide, particularly amongst young men, is a real issue. And in dentists now, perhaps is even more pertinent. COVID's brought its own problems, hasn't it? And it's mental health is something that dentists won't talk about, and perhaps men are worse than women. They won't talk
I think
about.
Part of it as well, I think, is as dentists, we're the people that people come to with problems. We're seen as the problem solvers, and also I think what is difficult with mental health is often when somebody's getting to that stage, it's more than one thing that's kind of going wrong. It's a kind of multitude of things, and it's sometimes hard to speak to the people who are closest to you because they're kind of part of where the issues are, and it's very, very difficult. So having a resource where there's like-minded people that have been there and gone through similar issues that you can just talk to is amazing. And as we had our issues in the clinic where I work. My friend and colleague Jeremey, and I just wish he'd have phoned this number. I really do. I really do. So thank you so much for setting up and being there, Jeremy, because it's fantastic.
There are issues like bullying is a recurring theme, and particularly corporate. Bullying is one, and just general anxiety and things like this. And, dentists just not feeling worthy and so frightened. And I would just say that, anybody who's listening to this, thinks, I've got no one to talk to, then just dial that number. And thanks, Mike, for putting that on the screen. And thank you to BACD. I was gobsmacked when they agreed and they wanted to support the charity. It means everything to have, you know, some incredible people in the BACD, well-known individuals, and I thought it's just fantastic that.
So Jeremy, I'm really glad that we can help you in two ways with both your passions, whiskey drinking and raising money for Confidental, which is an amazing, amazing service. I also have another proposal for you, actually.
Sure.
So Connor Bryant, who is one of the sponsors for the night, has offered all his reps, and he's got about 46 of them, to help man the lines. So he's really generous, free of charge. He generously donated their time, because obviously the most important thing about this is more than money is time. So he was wondering if you guys would require more manpower or girl power, and he's got them both, and he's happy to help you guys.
Right. We are dentists for dentists by dentists, and we do a lot of training. People don't just come onto the line, so we do training first. And anybody who wants to contact me or contact Keith Hayes or from our website can do, and I can pass them on. And if they're interested in volunteering, that's great. We've got some. I know that in the next few weeks we've got yet another volunteer training session. It's a bit like CPD. You don't just join Confidental. That's it. We're continually doing training. We did boundaries, I mentioned, with Jenny Brooks, and I personally, I've been in the game a few years, so consequently, I found that when I listen to her lecture, I go over the boundaries. You learn things that you can. We talk about the boundaries of Confidental, and you have to abide by, rules and regulations like anything, because. What do you as a dentist want to do? You want to treat, you want to help, you want to fix. Whereas the job we do as volunteers for Confidental is not that. We are actually helping the individual to heal themselves, or to start the process where they can access help to heal themselves. We're not experts. We're not mentors. For example, we'd refer to dental mentors, we'd refer to coaching if that was what was necessary, or specialist help. But we're just dentists, we're not specialists. And I think it's important that people understand that. We've got some incredible people who have got extra qualifications. A lot more of them, for example, myself, that's got nothing. There are people at just experience and empathy and sympathy. But there are people out there who have extra qualifications that help them perhaps do the job better than I can. I'm going to say it. But I think the number one thing is you're speaking to somebody. And that's what I think is different to Health Assured, which is a wonderful thing organised by the BDA. And in England, there's the Practitioner Health Committee or whatever. I can never forget that. I can never remember the name of it, and certainly not a glass of whiskey. But there are NHS practitioner support committees where they'll even direct you to, let's say, getting help from a psychiatrist or anything. We're just dentists, and we're there to help you. And if you want to ring us, that's what we're there. I'll never forget getting a call at 4 o'clock in the morning, okay, from a young distressed girl, and I just hung on the line for a few minutes with this whispering voice because she was so upset and so difficult. And it's amazing who contacts us. Makes you very humble. I've got to tell you that. It really does, to realize what goes on. And I don't know if any of you have been on Mental Dental, and you read the post on there and you think, how could fellow professionals, and particularly in those stories where there's bullying, behave like that?
And I have to say that's one of the things that the involvement that I've had with BACD, Shameek, and the events that I've been down with BACD, they are there's a huge camaraderie among the group. That I've been to lots of different events, conferences, organisations, but BACD really do seem to kind of support each other really nicely, and it's one of the things I think is so great about the organisation.
No, yeah, Mike, you just hit the ethos on the head, basically. Apart from education, the other thing is networking, supporting each other. And what Jeremy's doing with Confidental is just being, just fantastic. And I think the important point is just having an ear on the other side of the phone that will listen. That's a like-minded colleague that's not going to judge you. I think that's what we all need sometimes. We all get there, and to have someone there and a service that will help, young dentists or dentists in trouble. And like Jeremy said, even if it helps one person not do a stupid thing, you won. And we're really happy to support that.
Yeah, as I'm talking to you, Shameek, it reminded me that I was involved in one of the first postgraduate dental societies other than the BDA. And believe it or not, we really went back, and there's some very famous people who were involved. Somebody called, well, I'm sure you both have heard the Cura Post, Hans Cura. And it was the Dental Postgraduate Society of Manchester. We were one of the first organisations to hold postgraduate courses. And we did them nationally as well, but I got involved towards the end of it in the late 80s. But that camaraderie, and I learned so much from my peers because there was incredible people, Phil Green, the periodontist, and there was, as I say, Hans Cura, Peter Cura, and these, real people who, you felt almost like in their presence because they were so knowledgeable, and you picked up. And that's where I see, at the BACD. I feel like that when I go to the IADFE, the International Academy of Dental Facial Aesthetics in New York. And again, you're mixing with Goldstein and all these people have been fellows there. I go with Eddie Lynch and particularly on an annual basis there. And you pick up so much from other colleagues. And, you're never too old to learn, and also to learn from the young guys as well. Dentists sometimes are very, well, what do you know? I invariably learn from even the young colleagues that, come up and I say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, thank you for telling me. And there's some incredible guys, certainly in Manchester area, and Adeem Yunus, and he's one guy, and I'm buddies with dental buddies with Paul Tipton, a name synonymous with postgraduate education. Very, very knowledgeable. So you can learn from those kind of guys, but even from a young dentist, you'll pick up something. Oh, that's fine. It's to have an open mind. I think BACD is amazing. I know.
That's what's great about having this whiskey event, Shameek. So can you tell us a little bit about what's actually going to happen in the event?
Yeah. So we're going to start off. We're going to kick off at about 8 o'clock, and then obviously we'll go on till when we finish. But it's featuring Mesh Weinstein, who's a dentist himself, who has a real good interest in whiskey, like all of us, and talks about whiskey. So he's picked 4 different drams, lovely drams, which are going to be a surprise. And so we're going to do. I think we'll obviously do a little bit of introduction. I may actually get Jeremy just to say a few words about Confidental.
That'll be lovely.
I think will be quite nice. Just got a few minutes on that, and then we'll do a bit of tasting. I'm going to work out the order of the evening with Mesh this in the next week or 2 weeks. But we've also got a really nice raffle with a bottle donated by Luxury and Rare Whiskey. And thank you so much for the introduction to Barry, Mike. That was all down to you. Such a nice gent. And they've kindly donated a really, really good bottle of whiskey, which again, I'm going to leave it as a little bit of a surprise for the time being.
Oh, wow.
We're going to raffle that out, and then we're going to auction 3 bottles from the 3 casts that Mike and I and 56 other dentists are part of, and we're quite excited about it. We can't wait to taste it. Obviously, Mike and I have tasted the bottlings they've done so far and been impressed by it, but the proof will be in pudding when we bottle our own ones. And so in the middle of designing the bottles and the actual labels and everything at the moment. So we're excited about that. So we're going to auction that off. So hopefully that will raise a bit of money. It's been sponsored.
You're looking for your distillery exclusive, Jeremy. That we might see your name on the ballot there.
You know, you talked about, I remember once I had a patient in, and he was the chairman of a PLC, and he came as an emergency. He was in the Manchester area, and we got talking, and the irony was he was talking to me, and he said, actually, because we talk whiskey, I don't know how I got onto the topic of it. And in the end, he said, "Oh, I've got a barrel." And it was spent a bit of its life in Springbank, but it was actually an Ardbeg whiskey. And at the end of his appointment for the emergency, I just said, "You owe me." He says, "Right, what do I owe you?" And I said, "Nothing." He went, "What?" And I said, "Just send me a bottle of this whiskey." And he duly did. And it was called Priory. And what he did with a few medics, just like you did with dentists, was he was the, I think, chairman of, I don't know if it was at the time, or the person who ran the Wellington in London. And he actually sent me a bottle of this whiskey, like you guys are doing. It's very interesting. How old will your whiskey be at bottling?
Just over 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years?
Yes. We're hoping so. Yeah.
So I think the idea is, and we haven't totally fully discussed it, I think we're probably going to bottle some at 5. We may keep a few and then bottle again a few years down the line.
That is very, very good idea. I think, I'm talking about whiskey now, just for a second. I think a lot of people turn the nose up at young, because obviously it's got to be 3 years. I've got some cracking whiskies on there, on the shelf, that are quite young. A Leadjig, I think a Leadjig is about a 7-year-old or 11-year-old. I've got quite a few Dalwayne, 8-year-old, and fabulous whiskies. Yes, they can be a bit raw, but quite often I think it's exactly what I was saying, dentists or whiskey being like sheep. You can have a fabulous whiskey. It is an individual thing, and obviously most are 10 years plus, aren't they? The ones you can buy. You know, the youngest, I can't think of a regular one that's a 10-year-old.
You need to get away, Shameek. So
I apologize.
So thank you so much, Mike, and great meeting you, Jeremy. Love to see as many.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to mention about the night. So I think everybody, for the BACD event, just be aware that there's whiskey tasting. So you're actually going to get samples sent out. So if you're a BACD, if you're a non-BACD member, you can also join in. You just need to register for an extra £1, I think it is. But to join in the event, it's £40
as a non-member, and then the event itself is the same price, and you're going to get 4 lovely whiskeys sent to you and a bar of chocolate, so you can do a bit of food pairing with it as well. It's going to be a really, really good fun night, and we're all really, really looking forward to it.
And your name will be in the raffle draw, and then you can also bid for these bottles.
Correct. Yeah, I'll send out the details for everyone registered. We'll send out the details for the raffle. So, Mike, actually, what's happening, hopefully, is Barry's going to set up an exclusive member site on the Luxury and Rare website for us, and we can go in and purchase our raffle tickets there for the bottle, which will just be for us. So it'll be good.
That's awesome. Wonderful. And I don't know about. I'll have to look at the Charities Commission thing about, am I allowed to bid for something for my own charity?
I'm sure you are.
So I don't know, but I certainly would. I like the idea of bidding for Mike's bottles.
Good. Yeah, we're expecting you to bid high. Hey guys, listen, it's been a fun evening, and we'll have to do this again. And I'm gonna love you and leave you.
Slant.
All right.
Slante.
Slant bar, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you on the 25th of March. Is that right?
That's correct. 25th of March. Get yourself registered, because we've already got 35 people registered. Yeah. I was aiming for about 30, so I got sponsorship for 30. So we're over 30 already. So we want to get as many as we can.
That's incredible.
Details below. Go onto the website, get yourself registered, and we'll see you on that night. It's gonna be a good one. Thank you very much, gents.
Enjoy.
I enjoyed that, Dram. It was a real pleasure. It was fun. We learned some stuff and we talked some serious things and we had a bit of a laugh as well. It was a good night at the pub. I enjoyed it.
Perfect way of Saturday. Thanks a lot. See you.
Cheers, night. Good night.